And we are back. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Smart to Noise Ratio Pro Audio Podcast, episode
41.
41 it is.
We said 41 earlier.
That's what I typed in. I'm your humble host, John Dayton.
Professional.
And sitting directly to my left, your humble co-host, Anthony Kosobucki.
Hey, guys.
And we actually did some show prep this week. So for those of you who are tuning in, expecting to see an actual thought out, well-produced audio program.
Yeah, we got like half of that.
You're half in luck. We're still going to sidetrack and tell amusing stories and whatnot, because that's what we do. If you want a real slick production, listen to the Audio Nowcast. Look up Dave Pensato. We're just a couple of guys talking about audio.
Until we get sponsored, and then maybe we'll step up our game if we get free stuff. But
we would do that. If anybody's waiting to see if we're sponsoring, like, we're not going anywhere. We're gonna turn the box on and record once a week.
This couch is here all the time,
and I'm on it. So if you're waiting for the show to be a little more professional, just let us know.
Yeah, well, like we can wait. John can nurse my child later, I guess.
I don't even know what that means.
We'll find out.
Moving on. So. We did a little prep work. We decided it's been a while since we talked about dynamics, compressors, and things. And it comes up here and there in discussions, but we haven't really done a whole show about it. So we're gonna revive that horse a little bit, and then beat it back down.
Give another 6 months before we run out of ideas and talk about something we have before again. But at least it's fun for us, like especially if there's new stuff we get to play with, or new stuff we found out, and all that.
Right. So I'm gonna do the philosophy, and Anth's gonna do the gear specific stuff, because it's been, I don't know, probably 6 months since we've done a compressor show. Maybe longer yet.
Maybe longer. It was definitely warm outside. I think it was beginning of summer last year. So maybe closer to 10 months.
Early on in the podcast. Mm-hmm. I actually, where is it? I got an email on my phone here. Yeah, coming up. It's going to be the 1 year anniversary of the podcast. April 14th was when we started last year, and it's It's April the 6th, 7th by the time this gets released.
So we need to do like 10 more in the next 2 weeks.
Nah. That's pretty good, though, when you think about it.
Almost
52 weeks in the year, yeah. We're only 11 weeks out of the whole thing did we miss.
That's not bad.
Considering our schedules.
Yeah.
We had no idea of anything that we were doing at the beginning. So, well, anyway, let's dive into it. Compression. It's been, the last few months in particular, been a real learning experience for both of us. Mm-hmm. I had to get my chops together and really take them to a next level in post-production back in the fall, doing a lot of dialogue editing. Yep. And that sort of changed how I understood compressors and how I wanted to use them. And that worked its way into my live work, which then, from the recordings I get of my bands playing every week, worked its way back into the studio for mastering that stuff. Mm-hmm. And actually the real epiphany came. Let's diverge and go back to Book Week for a minute. Our buddy Brandon, who is not the Brandon you have heard recently, although our friend Brandon Gallwitzer, he was on a couple of early podcasts.
The rocket scientist.
Yes, he is quite literally a rocket scientist. He works for a company that does a lot of work for NASA. He is a mechanical engineer, also a guitar player, also got some pretty serious studio chops.
Yep.
Loaned us, we were in the studio with him a couple weeks ago, if you heard that podcast, loaned us his copy, and this is amazing, because I know guys who have this book who won't let anybody touch it, and now that I've read it, I understand.
You know why, and you don't mind, like, once I have an extra $75, I plan on buying it, because I feel like I'm smarter just having it sitting next to me.
And it's the book we're talking about is Mixing with Your Mind. Mm-hmm. And you hear guys talking about it, and you think you know.
You don't know.
You have no idea. It's
you don't know. That wasn't a sound effect. That was me being dumb.
Scotty doesn't know. But getting into this thing, it was cool for me because, well, actually, Anth had it first. He read it. And we were like, Anth will read it. He reads fast. He'll get through it in a couple of days.
I read it like 5 times.
Yeah, I figured I was going to have to bring the chloroform and knock his ass out so I could get my hands on this book. He finally, after his 5th read through, suffered to release it from his grasp, and I got my hands on it. And it was cool. We had different experiences. How was it for you going through?
There is like, not to sound like a pothead, but there is some heady stuff in there. Like stuff that I knew for sure. There was some stuff for sure that I didn't know. But it was like it's definitely a studio book. Like it's a studio mixing book. Like there are some live principles that are applicable, but for the most part, it's a very comprehensive. Like this isn't a book that you buy if you want to get into recording. This is a book that after you've been doing it for a while and you've gotten pretty good at it, you need to get.
I really can't see recommending it to the noobs.
Oh God, no!
Because
Like,
it would be like reading like a Calc 5 book.
I don't even recommend the Yamaha book for audio engineering to people that have just started, because that thing is confusing too. Like
in certain instances, though, it's good to read over your head, because if you feel like you're sort of very nearly getting something, that can prompt you to like do a little extra study and some figuring.
Right, and like it was useful for me. The Yamaha book it was useful for me because I had people around to not that I thought anything was wrong, but to double check how someone else interpreted it to see if it made more sense to me.
Right, and then if it's much more over your head than that, then what you hopefully get is you retain some of it, and then when you get into situations, you at least have the like, oh yeah, I kind of remember reading something, like maybe I should go back and read that again, or maybe the concept stuck there enough. You're like, oh yeah, now I get that.
That's what that is. Right.
This book probably isn't going to make much sense to you if you're like, I think I want to go into production. We can recommend some other books. In fact, check out the blog smart2noise.blogspot.com. We just did it a whole week. Search book week. You'll get 5 posts, at least 35 books.
Yep.
I mean, not quite that many. 20 anyway.
Just take a screenshot of Ica's bookshelf and go out and buy all that stuff and sort through it as you will.
Right. And, yeah, there's definitely some other...
I feel like that guy spent more on books than I did on heating bills in the last year.
Must be nice. Must be nice to have money. We'll get more on Ica later, because he had some good stuff for us, too, this week.
Just all the references I make, I feel like the guy doesn't like me, and I don't blame him.
Never mind. I'm not going to...
Most people don't. It's fair.
Anyway, so anyway, I would call Anth, and like, because we talk a fair amount, or we text mostly. Actually, it's usually it's too hard to talk
because one of us is in the ceiling or in a basement or
driving or mixing something.
Yeah, so it's way safer to text while we're driving somewhere,
right?
Then
but he was. Brother was a little bit down at times when he was reading that book, and other times it was like the cosmos had opened and he had seen the mysteries of the universe. It was like
there were times where I need to accomplish something right now. I just went and soldered the shit out of stuff for like 3 hours. Like I can do this. All right.
So anyway, I finally got a hold of it and cracked it open, and it was like immediately so much stuff started making sense to me. Like
it's like getting hit in the face with a hammer. Like the first couple chapters, just right out of the bat. There's no work into it. It's like, here's some knowledge. It's on the floor in front of you. I dropped it. Yeah. Pick that up.
But for me, I mean, it was cool because it was an affirmation. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm a big shot or I'm anybody, but like what it did for me was clarify a bunch of stuff that I sort of understood but didn't understand well. And maybe
it like, stuff, but it helps to have somebody like, it happens all the time with me and John. Like, I'll have a certain question about something, and I understand the concept of it, and I know how it all works, but he'll explain it a different way, and it makes more sense. And
the shorter the explanation, the better. So, like, what you get out of this thing is, like, very, very short, concise explanations that go into stuff that's just inexplicable. Like, that's the thing, is audio engineers are so bad at discussing the intangibles. Like, hey, how do you accomplish, like, such and so when you're setting something up? Like, well, you gotta kind of just, you smell it and lick it.
Do you have like half an hour? Let me show you. Like, that's what it usually turns into. Is like, well, let me show you what I do on my desk. Like, that's.
And so, yeah, the methods that he gives, like for, setting up where your monitors go, setting up where the drum kit goes in the room, figuring out where the overheads go, putting up a mix, even just real basic stuff.
Yeah.
It was cool because it was stuff that I had kind of figured out on a parallel evolution. And some stuff that I was doing because I was like, I'm just a cruddy sound guy and I don't have very good gear, very much gear, so I'm just going to plug it in like this, and it's kind of my cheater way of doing things. And he's like, no, this is the best way to do things, and I'll tell you why. So that was really cool, and it was really cool to now have. He's really good at visual metaphors, which is a help because neither of us are math guys. Like guys could talk about the calculus of this, and
I'm 12.5% a math guy.
Yeah, and I'm probably about half of that. So to have like just a slick visual metaphor for what you're looking for. And lo and behold, like I read the chapter about placing your monitors, and I've been placing speakers for 20 years. Like, granted, a lot of it is in live venues, but I don't just hear a speaker. I hear a speaker coming off a wall, and I hear it getting soaked up by carpet, and I hear how it changes as you move off axis.
Like, to put it in air quotes, you hear the speaker.
Right. I'm hearing the total package. So,
I hearing packages. Yeah, come back from that one.
I had a teabag joke, but it's a family show. I don't have any singles for the swear jar.
I got a 5. We'll get through that.
All right. Can I borrow $5? Anyway, well,
I think.
But
I'm
anyway,
out.
there's just so much, science, and you got to have this program and this calibrated mic and these principles and measure this and set up. No, just put your speakers down and listen for the magic. I'm not going to give away any of the stuff. Like, now that I've read it, I don't want any other suckers to read it because
there's like. When I got it originally, Brandon told me, he's like, it's kind of pricey. I was like, okay, what is it, $40 for a book? No, it's $75 plus shipping from Australia because you can't buy that shit anywhere else. Like, it's like, well, that's a little bit much. And then I read it. I was like, oh man, I wish I had $75.
That's why.
Yeah, like
we might have to go in on a copy and like have a joint custody.
I get the book this week. Joe.
You have my Joe Meek. I get the book this week.
You can have the Joe Meek back forever.
But yeah, going in, just the way he describes like how you're listening and these imaginary objects to picture in your mind. And so anyway, we had gone into my room and messed with how high my speakers are, how far apart they are, how close they are to the wall, how much we tilt them in, and we did a pretty good job. Like, I felt like I was hearing things pretty true on them. My room's not ideal, my speakers are not ideal, but in 20 minutes, half an hour, like we got
a pretty decent mix out of those.
And it was like, well, I suspect that the tone molecules are more prosperous in this region of the like.
Do we have to start giving Dave money for that? Like, dude.
No, that's my bit.
Oh, okay, that's right.
I own the rights to tone molecules. It wasn't sound guy voodoo. Like, we went in like, all right, well, we know if we put them too close to the wall, the bass is going to be weird, and we know if we put them too far apart, the imaging is going to be wrong. And both of us know how to translate a mix. I understand it from mixing under a balcony and then walking out in the room to understand how it sounds.
That's rough. That takes a while.
And Anth knows it from mixing in a tiny office and trying to make that sound good other places. So we came at it with a fair amount of knowledge. And we were all right. Well, whatever. Let's pick a spot that looks good. Okay, now let's move them a foot. All right, that was marginally better, so let's start cheating them back the other way. We'll go 6 inches. Okay, that's...
I think I just sat in a chair for like half an hour and had you like kind of nudge.
Well, because you have dog ears, but yeah, I mean, that was the way we went about it. Like, all right, plunk here. Okay, that's not bad. Now plunk here, which is better. All right, and so we made the adjustments smaller and smaller until we had them about as good as we figured we could get them.
Yep.
I moved them not even twice. Like, I walked in, I had a little bit of mastering work to do. I'm like, all right, well... I know what these speakers sound like in this room. I know what movie dialogue sounds like on them. I know what rock and roll sounds like on them. Right. I know what produced music. Like, I know what
you're good at hearing those speakers.
Right. I know them. Like, we're buds. So I moved them a foot closer together, and the center came alive. It was just unbelievable. Like, I thought I was hearing balance before, and I thought I was hearing panning. And moving the speaker, like, I probably didn't even move them a foot. I probably moved them like 6 or 8 inches, actually.
Yeah.
A little bit closer to the center. And all of a sudden, that piano that before I was hearing in both ears became a solid piano in front of me. Like, if I closed my eyes, my perception of where the piano was in the room was dead in front of me.
Mm-hmm. And it's so tasty. And the mono summing after that, just like...
Yeah, I'm gonna complain less about mixing in mono.
After hearing that,
there's a guy that makes world-class records on a single Oratone. Sheesh.
Oh God. You want to buy a pair of V8s? They're up for sale.
No, I want a pair of Adams.
That's the word around town, it seems.
So anyway, so that's that. Some other epiphanies that came out of the book, and here we're gonna roll it back towards dynamics. Concept that, and this is one that I'm sort of willing to give away, is or maybe I won't give it away. Anyway, maybe if we can,
the math part of it, Yeah, no, don't do that.
All right. Well, suffice it to say, now that we've teased that,
there's math involved.
I wonder if we can get a sponsorship out of this guy. Like, see how many books we can move. It's $75 a pop from down under. Like,
we move them at $70 a pop. Probably move them faster. Like, do you remember what I used to sell? I'd sell anything.
Kind of want to call him up and be like, hey, how much product would we have to move to get a freebie?
6 cases done.
Done.
All right.
Everybody wants to know what we were talking about. So, but anyway, compression. And you know this, you need to be careful how much compression you use, but you need to be really, really careful about how much compression you use, because the effect of putting a little on here, then putting a little on the group, then putting a little on the whole thing, send it out to mastering, they put some more on it, that adds up way, way more than
plus
you think.
Radio.
Yeah, plus whatever's going to happen in master control.
Radio.
Yeah. So there's a good reason to compress less, and I had been, that was another cool affirmation for me. Like, I had been just sort of, I don't know, when I discovered compressors, I was like, oh, these are going to make my life so easy, and they do. In the live world, you've really got to use them.
Oh yeah,
or you lose your mind. I mean,
especially if you don't know who you're working with.
Right. There's only so many faders you can ride.
Good God.
But how much you use it and how much you flatten things out, and in the live world, like there's really only. I'm trying to think. Like, I suppose there's a lot of places where you could have compression, but really, in most rigs, you're not getting into the limiters on the system processor. Like, you're compressing on the channels or on the groups, and apart from like making everybody's ears contract, like there's really.
I got into that this week. We usually when the seasons change, at my place, the chief audio engineer, who's not me. Decides that he wants to re-EQ the room, which is great because I re-EQ it every week, and he realizes that there's no snow on the ground, or it's warm outside, or the leaves are changing, or there's snow on the ground. Well, we should re-EQ the system. Great. So we do it again, and he's like, I want to mess around with some stuff, and I found out that he brought me a faulty mic cord, so the pink noise wasn't reading right and everything. I listened to the mix, and it's just I had some lossless stuff on my phone that we played through the system, and it sounded okay. I was like, let me try something for a second. I threw 1.75 across the main mix, and magic things happened. It just sounded tighter. It sounded fuller.
Took it out or put it in?
Put it in. There was no compression on the main mix at all.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry. I thought we were still talking about EQ. I dozed off there.
No.
Never mind, Grandpa. Go back to sleep.
But he, he's all suddenly like, oh, let's put limiters on everything. I was like, let's not do that. Let's actually run stuff the right way, just a little bit. I feel like it's amazing. I've worked there for a few years, and when I started, he's like, I've been running sound for a decade. I was like, oh, great, me too. I'm 24. But within the last week, maybe 2 weeks, he's actually started taking my advice on stuff and listening to what I have to say. He's like, yeah, it sounds, it was a good idea. I like that. Like, I haven't not heard that about anything that I've said in the last week, which is nice for me, because I don't come home and just want to break things now. But I was like, let me just try something.
And that's the unfortunate thing, is I would go to his job and say the same stuff he had been saying, and they would listen to me. Like,
because John's got a beard and I can't grow one yet. Like, that's what it comes down to. John's got 4. Like, maybe it's because I'm having a kid. Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm an adult now because there's a child coming that's flipping off the sonogram and stuff.
That is about the baddest ass sonogram I've ever seen.
Right. But you didn't get the good one. Like, he's flipping off with one hand, but like, he rolled around and I saw him and he had a thumbs up and pointing at you at the other one. They didn't screenshot that, and I wish they did.
Oh man.
That kid.
Watch out for this kid.
It kicks on beat.
Oh, we're in big trouble.
He kicks on beat. Like, we were doing a song last Sunday morning, and Amanda told me, she's like, kid was kicking on beat, and as soon as the drum stopped, kid stopped. That kept going back in, like, and not just like 4 to the floor, like 1 and 2, 3 and a 4, like.
All right, so what do we do? We totally dropped the narrative on that.
My kid's gonna be sick.
Compression on the main mix.
Yeah, it just, because like the stuff that it totally doesn't apply to what the music sounds like on Sundays. But one of my favorite things, like, I heard somebody say it once. They're like, "Oh yeah, man, I use Hey Baby and Hella Good by No Doubt to make sure my mix is all there. I was like, that's ridiculous. And then I did it. I was like, oh, damn.
We were going to do that, too.
It was so like that.
Those are the exact songs we were going to use when we went into the studio.
And I did it. I was like, all right, let's close the door so none of the church people hear this. Like, slap it on. I was like, all right, sound good. He's like, yeah, the bass is pretty good. Oh, we also swapped out the amps. We put a nice, we were going to put a Crest CA12 on the subs, but I didn't want to kill people. We got a lot of old people. But it sounded good. It sounded pretty tight. Like, you could still feel there's a little bit of wave in it. And like, I don't want to crush it. I don't want to make it gross or anything like that. But, like 1 3/4, because the drive rack's nice like that. Like, you can really dial it in. That's really the only thing the drive rack's good for. Like less than 2 to 1 on the main mix, and it popped. The bass got fatter. The vocals got a little bit richer. Like, it does what compression does. But at the same time, I feel more confident in whatever mix he's going to do on Sundays now that I know that that's going to be there.
Yeah. I have tended to not do that. Like, I always apply my compression later in the game. Like, I rarely compress on the channels when I'm mixing live for a number of reasons. It keeps compression out of monitor mixes, and I can get a lot more done with 4 channels of compression, so I need less in my rack.
Yeah.
But actually, I used to work for a band where the one guitar player was I found out later that he's a mastering engineer. The first gig I did for him, he's like, hey, can you strap a compressor across the main or across the main mix? Like, put a comp on the 2 bus, give me like 10 to 1, and then dial it in just a little bit. I'm like, okay.
What? I can't hear you over the blast theme. What is that?
10 to 1 was a bit much, yeah. I thought. Like, I've done it other times. Well, when I can't remember. He was looking, so I actually made the numbers 10 to 1, and then he went away, and I turned it down and then pulled the knob off and set it back at 10 to 1. But
all my knobs have like cuts in them, so you can't do unless you get in there and round them out with a Leatherman or something. Then you're screwed later.
But yeah, it does. I mean, I don't know. It's a bit of an advanced topic, but deciding where it goes. Like, the further along it is in the chain, the less it's acting like a safety measure, and the more it's acting like glue.
Right. Like, there's a reason that there was such a big pickup in the sale of SSLs, SSL consoles with a master bus compressor.
Right.
Like, I've heard, like, on Pensato's place when he interviewed Chris Lord Alge, he's like, yeah, I leave the master bus on the time. It's like I leave it on like 2 to 1. But at the same time, he's like, I do that so I don't blow anything. It's like it's more of a safety measure for him, but at the same time, his mixes sound friggin' awesome.
Yeah,
you can't complain about that kind of mix. Everything is there and it's gorgeous. And sometimes there's a little too much top end, but that, like, when you're playing it through radio stations upon whatever, like, you lose all that high end when you listen to something fresh off the cut.
So yeah, why don't we go there a little bit? Talk about, like we did just briefly here, talk about where to use compression. We'll cover the live side here quick. When I first got compressors, I only had 2 channels, so I would insert one on the kick drum and one on the lead vocal, and everybody else had to fend for themselves. And then bought more compressors until I had like 10 channels in my outboard racks, and all right, kick and snare and this and that, and compressing everything down the way. But what got frustrating was I have 10 channels of dynamic processing, and I'm out of dynamic processing, and I have one more thing to get. So it was when I started working with Carl. He didn't want any dynamics on the channels except maybe the kick and the bass, like stuff that was really going to drive into the subs hard. He would let you compress those on the channel. And the reason is if you're doing monitors from front of house, your monitor sends are post insert. Like, you can, on a lot of consoles, on bigger consoles especially, you can decide whether the monitor mixes are hearing your front of house EQ or not, but
not on what almost everybody has. Like,
well, but even if they do have that feature, like my Soundcraft has that feature, but I can't select the monitors to be pre-insert. So if there's a comp on the channel, they're hearing that in the mix, and it might help if it's gentle, but it's going to raise the noise floor. It's going to make feedback a little more likely, and if the compression's too heavy, that really can mess with vocalists especially,
how
you know,
they're
like
interpreting
they're
what
pushing
they're
and pushing, and yeah, they can't get any more out of it because the more they sing, the more it cuts.
That's funny because Joe only wanted compression. Like I took the Joe Meeks out to a show he was doing, and he put it on snare and lead vocal.
Who, Carl?
Joe.
Wait, who? What?
Joey.
Oh, Joey. Okay.
Yeah, it was strange. Like, but yeah, it's funny because they grew up the same place, learned from the same people, type of guys, and like not backwards, but different, which I think is
I can see those choices though. Knowing Joe
yeah.
and knowing how he mixes. So anyway, what I started doing was from Carl, like he would have me insert just 8 comps on the groups, and maybe keep one out for the bass or the kick if there was something that was really unruly and needed to be compressed like that. And what that does is, if you set them up right, and I don't know, it's too hard to give you a tutorial of like what I mean by right, but what you get when you get the settings right is if you push the channel up, like you get everything dialed in so that like when everybody's just playing along, the comps really aren't doing anything. But then you get it so that if you push the channel up a little bit, it starts to drive into the compressor.
Right.
So if you want things fatter, you push the channel up. If you want things louder, you push the group up.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of trade-off to that. Like if you have, 2 guitars or 3 guitars even going into your guitar group, if you want fatter guitar sound, you push up the guitar that you want fatter. If you want more volume, you might have to push up the group and then also pull down a couple of the other guitars there. So like there can be a little bit of interplay back and forth there if you're pushing things really far. But like when I would set up,
unless you're mixing relevant, that's not really an issue.
yeah, like I don't know how many bar bands I've done on my little Allen and Heath GL 2400 4-bus mixer. I would compress the bass separately and then just put a comp on every group. So I'd have a kick snare group, a rest of the kit group, a guitar group, and a vocal group. And like for guitar solos, I would either push the channel up, because it depends on what the guitar player does. Like if he steps on something that makes him shrill, then you don't want it to get louder. It's going to cut through by itself.
You want to fatten it up.
Or like what a lot of guitar players would do is just not do anything for the solos, and unless they really needed to change their tone, like they would just keep playing along and rely on me to turn it up.
Yep.
So if I wanted it to just be fatter, I would push the guitar fader up maybe 4 dB, 5, like not a lot, not a huge move. And then, well, not a huge move for live. And then if the fatness thing wasn't working, if it just straight up needed to be louder because everybody else in the band was blasting away in a particular section, like the solo during the end of Freebird was one where I would do this. I'd grab the group and push that up instead because everybody's doing it, wailing away. So anyway, that's kind of my whole philosophy. Like at work, I do some of both. I do some compression on the channels because, well, we're all on ears, so that makes it a little bit less of a sin. But I'm also not compressing very much. The more you do it, I guess, when you first get your compressor, like older guys come around like, oh, first day with your new compressor, because you just don't have ears for it yet. Like you're totally making it flat. But like by the time you hear it engage, you've ruined it. And so you got to learn some chops and learn how it's
like learning everything else, though. It's like learning who you're going to put on what mic and all that stuff. Like it takes a while to learn.
Yeah. And you also don't have very good stuff too. So like a good compressor can chop 18 dB out of something and you never hear it. But with other stuff,
even not good compressor, like the MPA stuff, like it's technically not a great compressor, but it sounds freaking awesome.
Right. But anyway, and this is one of those things, like you never want to mix with your eyes, but all of that stuff has lights on it for a reason. Like I don't know how many times I've set, well, shucks, I've got, 22 channels of dynamics at work, and most of them aren't cutting like at a huge peak. They're taking 6 dB off. Most of the time they're not doing anything. And if somebody really lays into them, they're taking off 1 to 3. All they're doing is just evening things out, making things just a little bit easier for me.
Yep.
And so that's not a ton of compression to hear in the monitors. The musicians don't know that they're there. And I still have freedom to mix. Like they're not chopping so much out that I don't need to, like that the faders can just stay parked. Like I still have to, all right, this song's bigger, so I need to get on the faders and make some adjustments for this. This song's laying back a little bit. I need to change the balance of things. So that's using them as a real subtle tool, and not a carpet tack hammer, not a sledgehammer.
I think I still do have the picture somewhere. I remember Carl just berating me about compression settings. He was like, listen, dude, I didn't do that. I just took a picture of what the other guy did. Like, before he started taking me seriously, the chief audio engineer at my place, he thought that if the lights were coming on in the compressor, that you were doing something wrong. So he would just set the threshold to like plus 15.
I remember when that was up on Facebook. He showed us.
And like the ratio is set at infinity. One, he's like, if it really needs it, it'll get it. Like, what? You got to drive this place at like 105 all the time to maybe touch like getting 3 dB knocked off. Maybe. So like we talked and we joked about wiring like 500 volt capacitors and stuff. Like, oh, direct charge. Well, make sure he's wearing steel toes too. But yeah, like that's the other extreme. You got somebody who's like, well, you know, if you're doing everything right, you shouldn't be using them. Like, no, they're there for a reason. Like, I've got a couple vocalists that are extremely dynamic, like my wife and the other two worship leaders at the church have very good mic control. Like, they know when they're going to rip into something, they pull back, they'll lean back just a touch, pull the microphone back, Aretha Franklin style. Mm-hmm. Not too much, but enough to give you at least a warning that they're going to rip into something serious. And I finally got everything set. Like, we finally agreed, like, okay, you want 4 to 5 to 1 and everything. I want like 2.5 to 1. We'll leave it at like 3.1.
I even think that's a lot.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely still is, but that's where I can live. Like, that's where I can leave it and have to not screw with it enough. Yep. Like, I can go into the driver. I can screw with stuff enough after that to almost correct for that. But yeah, like,
and ratio is a big thing. Like, I listen to a lot of Dave Pensato's podcasts, and he's always surprised when guys, like, apparently compressors come in 2 flavors as far as Dave's concerned: 4 to 1 and 8 to 1, and then there's limiters beyond that. And I'm like, man, I'm choosing between 1.3 to 1 and 1.7 to 1 on all my stuff. Because if I am going to compress something a lot, I mean, unless there is a place for high ratio. Like, if you get something that's totally out of control and you just need
studio's more capable for that. Like, room mics you crush. Or sometimes
when you're compressing for effect, sometimes you just all buttons in, or find the button that says nuke under it, or crank that ratio knob all the way over past infinity to 1.
I have to try and remember the funny story Justin told me about the distressors and all the other vintage gear that he's got there.
Okay, hang on to it for a minute. Yeah. So when I compress live, like, I don't think I have a compressor anywhere in the house that's set higher than 2 to 1. Because if it is going to compress, now I do have a couple of things that I compress a lot, and my kick drums aren't one of them, oddly enough. But
didn't you have one of the kick drums not crushed, but like 3 or 4 to 1, and then the other one was just open?
Yeah. Well, the internal mic isn't compressed at all because I'm just getting click sounds out of that, right. And then the external mic is running through one of my DBXs, and like, I don't know, all the articles say, you know, hit that sucker at 5 to 1, 6 to 1, but no,
magic happens. Like,
use your ears, folks.
It might, like, I've got one kick drum totally open just because I only have 10 channels of compression and my groups don't have inserts on them. So
thank you, Yamaha.
Yay. So like all my vocals have on, like, the 2 lead vocalists and the 4 background lead vocalists, like the section leaders, have comps on them, and then we've got another, like, a Behringer multicom, which it took me almost a month of convincing, whining, begging, pleading, hitting things, yelling to get the kick and snare on one. Like, way too much work to convince somebody that, no, really, we should put a compressor on the kick. Trust me. Compressor kick, speaker mic, and one extra vocal, which either is me or someone else that's singing that week. Believe it or not, I sing. You can't hear it because your ears don't go that low, but I do. I touch the bottom of those 18s right around the ridge of the. But yeah,
you feel the worship when Anthony sings.
We're a bunch of white people, but trust me, there's a little bit of black in there. But yeah, like, where was I going with that? Oh, like, individual channel compression. So we don't have, like, through the drive rack, which is convenient for it to have some kind of overall comp, but most of our stuff is, you know, guitars are wide open, bass is wide open, which it really shouldn't be. Like, the guy that plays every Sunday needs a compressor. He's got one. He's got a little pedal that he could use, and he's like, I haven't really played with it yet, so I'm not going to bring it in. I was like, bring it in. I'll play with it. I'll make that okay. But he hasn't done it yet, so I don't know.
let me see. Before we wandered off, I was going to talk about there are a couple of things that I really slam. My two lead vocalists, my boss and my other. I don't know if he's really my boss. He's Darren.
Darren's everyone's boss, and you just don't know it. Like, I feel like he's the undercover boss that everyone's watching all the time. We're like, yeah, what is?
Everybody just does the right thing because he's in the room.
Yeah, and that's awesome because no one feels bad about doing the right thing because he's in the room.
At any rate, I'm talking like the two guys on stage leading who are on staff. Everybody else is volunteers. Darren doesn't have as much vocal range as Brian. I mean, Brian, if somebody if I measured it, I might be a little bit surprised to find out he has like 50 dB of range in his voice. It's probably close. It's more than 40. Which is more dynamic range than the whole band has sometimes. So I compress him pretty heavily. But like he also has, even with great mic technique, like
he's got a big voice.
He has a huge voice, and it's a tenor, so it cuts through really well. Right. So I compress him a lot, and it's going to his ears, but he understands that or feels it or something. Like, we've never had a conversation about it, but he works it, and he'll work the mic. Like if he's not leading, I know he's singing just as loud. He's got the mic down by his belly button, and it's coming through the perfect amount.
Right.
Like, he really just mixes himself. But at the same time, too, when he really hammers on it,
you need to kind of have one hand over by the knobs just to be safe.
It would save me. Well, if I didn't have compression on him, I would never take my finger off his fader. Like he's got that much power that he could completely swamp the mix if he wanted to.
Right.
So anyway, that's compression live. Let's wow, are we past the halfway mark already? Amazing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Good.
We're slamming.
Good.
Nice. So let's go into the studio a little bit. I'll start up on this, and Anth can talk about. We got that vintage gear, so we'll cover that. But,
oh yeah.
I'll talk about my experience a little bit with the mastering work that I've been doing lately, and this whole thing, like, compress less. Like the whole Bruce Swedien preserve the transients, man, is that stuff true? Like you need to learn if you're in the studio. Like compression sounds good, but you can definitely put too much of it on stuff. So like I would, in my mastering chain, I would bring a channel of something in, a 2-mix in, and I'd compress once on that channel and then again a little bit on the 2-mix. So I would sort of trying to think how to say. I guess I would have one acting almost as a limiter, but not with settings that heavy. But one that would kick in and really take some peaks out and kind of level things out. And then the compressor on the output at the end of the chain was acting more as just like kind of active all the time, always cutting like 1 or 1.5 or 2 dB out, and just kind of helping to glue things together. And even that was getting to be, a lot. Like I could push my mixes far enough that they would just flatten out, even with just those two little, like very lightly set compressors in place. So instead, what I would do is, instead of like going back and forth between these two, looking at my dynamics meter and like seeing how much I had cut down on the difference between my peaks and my RMS values as I went through something, I decided, like, all right, screw it. If I want something louder, I'm just going to turn it up. And it's not quite as easy as all that. I don't know. I cheat a little bit. Like, I use a couple of plugins that sort of have some built-in compression in them that make that a little bit. They make it quicker, actually. So I don't know. I don't know how much I'm doing really differently from when I was working a pair of compressors, but I'm also just working the faders more, like riding a fader, which isn't as accurate and isn't as microscopic as having a detector circuit and a compressor watch your signal the whole time, but it also puts some more feel into it. In my case, I'm sort of automating. Like I'll listen to a pass through and kind of move the fader myself, and I don't record fader moves, but I'll draw them in, right? So they're fairly precise.
Do you want to use that alpha track?
What's that?
That one fader.
No, I don't. Yeah, because it's got that there MIDI in it. I don't know. My doctor says I'm not to MIDI. MIDI is the devil. I believe it's from the 7th ring of hell.
There's something about sending a vocal to MIDI that just makes me feel dirty. So I can't do it. Like I know it's just drawing the automation, but I feel I work in a church. I can't send that much.
Yeah. And there are modern solutions to have a motorized fader on your DAW for about $120. So maybe this is the year.
Maybe I'll spend some more of my money and hope the church reimburses me for that. I do that too. Like having like you said, like plugins that kind of cheat for you a little bit. Like the Slate, the VCC, like it doesn't necessarily compress, but there's definitely like the algorithms in that are disgustingly good. So when you drive a channel harder, it'll only go so far. And you do get some not natural, but simulated natural desk compression. Like there's no more voltage left for you to have. So we're going to cut that back a little bit on you. Mm-hmm. Like it's a nice thing. Like I definitely use that in my favor on, I usually double or quadruple track bass depending on how feisty I'm feeling that day. But, I'll just drive the piss out of a couple of them and really get something, fat and chunky that'll drive the whole thing, and then have a couple more channels on the bass or the kick drum or whatever that are a little bit more dynamic that let it feel out a little bit more.
And that's the rider plugins. I've actually never used them just because I was like, whatever, if I want to ride something, why do I need to pay $300 for somebody's plugin? I'll just ride that shit.
I've used that a couple times, and what I've done is I've automated the on and off of it.
Right, have it only playing some of the time.
Right, like if I usually what I'll do is there's a neat trick that Dave Pensato had. He's like, sometimes you don't get a double lead vocal and you want it. He's like, yeah, you can double it, you can nudge it, 20 milliseconds either way. He's like, but what sounds pretty cool is drawing in the automation of a delay. So drawing your automation from delay, set the parameter so it'll only max out at like 30 milliseconds, and then put the randomizer button in. And leave that in, and then on top of that, automate the on and off of your smash or whatever you're going to do.
Right.
And that sounds pretty cool.
And what those riders really are is just a leveling circuit. You'll see these if you ever worked on installed systems, some of the smarter ones, like whatever channel is going to have like the podium mic on it. They have this circuit built in, or this digital processing that's sort of almost as good as having a junior high kid stand at the fader for you. It's not great, but it's functional. And what it does is you set a target volume for that input, and if it's below that, it raises it up, and if it goes over that, it starts to compress.
A cheap companion type of thing, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what all those riders and levelers and stuff are doing. Yeah. But that's the alternative is if you want something more even, level it, ride it, or set up a couple of plugins or a plugin that will raise it when it's low and compress it when it's hot.
Right.
But yeah, I'm finding that the more I work on stuff, the better. It just sounds better if I just turn it up or turn it down, because that leaves the dynamics in. Like if there's a big drum fill, I could have a compressor come in there and like mash it completely flat, and it sounds like it's been through the ringer when it's done. Or I could just turn it down during that passage, and then
it sounds more human. It doesn't sound as like. I know it's done for effect and stuff, but it doesn't sound as much like a joke, I guess. Mm-hmm.
It sounds cleaner to me and more exciting, because what's exciting is dynamics. Like I've said it on the blog a number of times. Yeah. Like, listen to a song. Like, how exciting is it? What is it? What's that Led Zeppelin song that starts out with like two big hits?
Good Times, Bad Times.
There you go. How exciting is that? Like, song starts
in the little the snare rim.
Right, like, ooh, it's way down there. It's just and then two more big hits. Bam,
blaze way the hell into that thing. John Bonham was a friggin' monster.
Well, and then, the hole that you fall into, and it was a hole that you fell into even in vinyl when there wasn't that much dynamic range in the system.
So you didn't start scraping in the next song.
Right. Yeah. But when there's the full stop right before the solo later in that song, guys, you Zeppelin fans, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Full stop measure, or beat of rest, and then bam, big drum hit, and the solo comes screaming in there. You fall into that. People literally move,
they lean forward.
They lean forward.
It's like that is the perfect use of a dramatic. I'm looking at a Telecaster. I just want to play the damn thing.
But what gets even better is in the digital world, when the noise floor is at a negative 144. Falling into a hole on a vinyl record, like, you go into the hiss and the needle scratch and the, whatever parts of your system you can hear. On a digital system, you do a full stop, you're in the darkness of space. Like,
sorry, Dave, I can't let you do that. Like, no one will hear you.
Like, there's still, even on like the remat, like, okay, I don't have a vinyl player that works. I wish I did. But yeah, like I listen to that stuff on speakers here through, do it lossless on my iPod or whatever. I still like hearing the noise. Like, there's something exciting to me about like knowing that something's gonna happen.
Well, that's I like that at shows when they play that song live.
Oh my god!
Or, when cover bands play that song live, it goes dead, and
even the ground hum is exciting right there.
Right, it's because it sounds like restrained power, like dead. Like your ears relax for a second, you can hear the mains hissing, you can hear the amps humming. Like
something badass is gonna happen.
Like, it's coming soon. Here's the wind up.
And then like they wait twice as long. It's like, oh god, what the
Some buddies of mine used to do that with the Immigrant Song. I'm sure a million cover bands have done this. Now you better stop. And then instead of moving right on with the song, like would actually stop for 4 bars, and the place would just go nuts. Like
Josh Mullen lights up a cigarette, walks around, talks to a couple girls, like boom, like
and we're back.
Hi, Josh. I know you don't listen,
but anyway, those are extreme examples of dynamics of a lot of noise, then no noise, then a lot of noise. But, here's where, people tell you not to mix with your eyes, and this has been a big struggle for me to, like, look at something and go, well, that's not quite a 2x4 yet. Maybe I could squeeze that a little more. But I look at the waveforms. They're there for a reason. They're there to help you out. And, you can't only mix by the waveforms, but I've had times where, like, I did a mix and I thought it was pretty good, and I, hit render, and I'm watching it render out, and like, oh, man, shucks, I got a whole dB and a half to go on this one. Well, let's pull it back up and see what else I can turn up. And in those cases, it worked out great because a dB and a half, like those,
it matters.
There's a lot of bits flying around at that point.
Yep.
So there's big differences between a mix that comes in at negative 1.6 and one that comes in at negative 0.1. And conversely too, like I'll look at a mix sometimes and like, man, I just made lumber. What the heck was I thinking? And then, all right, shut the monitor off or look the other way, turn it up and listen from out in the hall, like hit play. And like, no, it's.
And there's sometimes that it sounds kind of neat. Like what I've been doing a lot, recently, it was a thing, Joe Baresi, I don't know if it's his trick or something that he's doing, but I've been, on a few songs that I've been recording, double miking the vocal. And he was he not telling me, he was telling people that are way more qualified than me to do what I do. But saying, he's like, yeah, there are certain parts where I wanted this guy's vocal, I knew I wanted to have a distortion plug-in or an overdrive on him. I just stuck a 57 right next to the actual mic and ran that through, like squashed the crap out of that, crushed that sucker, ran it through an overdrive pedal, whatever. And I started doing that. So I had Brandon, that's been on the podcast recently, the drummer, Caprell let me borrow a EV RE27. So I stuck that behind this, I think it's a Lewitt mic. I don't know. One of my buddies from California Road let me borrow it to demo it for a little while. Stuck it behind there and not necessarily crushed the piss out of it, but ran through an Avalon and that compressor's junk. So probably crushed the piss out of it. But it sounds super fat. Like when you just drive in, like there are certain, like the swells, like the guy that I've been recording, his vocals are super dynamic. And he's got great control of his stuff, like to the point where I can tell when he's shaking his head in front of the microphone. Like I can hear it. Like I know it's a mono signal, but it's not. I'm getting some killer sounds out of squashing something. Like they give you the ability to do that for a reason. There's a reason that you can squash something like room mics, like on drums that make stuff pump. You can automate that in and out or bring down the level and all that stuff. But I've had some awesome experiences recently, in particular with either driving a 57 on a vocal or that RE27, crushing it and just bringing it in to where my ears are happy.
Right. That's something else that I've been doing, like the Smash channel thing. We've talked about that here before. We talked about it on the blog this last week, and we can cover that again real quick. Yeah. But the reason it works so well, Smash channel, for those of you that don't know, is you double a signal. You either take a microphone, use a Y cable, bring it into 2 channels, or send it through your patch bay, bring it up on 2 channels, or in a DAW, just double the track, duplicate it.
Right.
but you leave one basically unprocessed. Now, it might need a vocal might need a little bit of compression just to kind of tame it down a little bit. Whatever, do that, but don't go nuts. Don't compress for effect. Compress for utility.
Right.
Then with the other one, just have your wicked way with it. Like, push all the buttons in, press the nuke button, slam the ratio knob, whatever. As long as the compressor doesn't start to fart out, like, just make it as obnoxious or as not, whatever. Like, just make it be whatever you want it to be compressed. Now, if you put the smash channel up by itself, it's going to sound totally flat and uninteresting. But if you start to sneak it up, not to be even with and not to replace, but just to fill in underneath, you get all the fatness.
Or bring it in for effect on certain,
right.
like big notes that, for example, like the guy that I'm working with, like when he swells into a chorus, like we have to double track all his vocals because he'll swell into a chorus and like hold out these big, gigantic, huge notes and just go for days on it, and then have to start a whole other track for like the chorus, and then swing back to the other track for the verse and stuff.
Right. So you could do it the whole time.
It sounds huge.
Just to fatten up a vocal a little bit. You could do it for the chorus, just to make the chorus have more energy. You could do it, like Anth said, for one note. You could even do it just for the tails of notes, like just as they're kind of running out of gas, holding out a long note. Crossfade the smash channel.
Oh my gosh, that's like what's made it super exciting for me is because I'm on my Smash channel, like run an 1176 plugin, not all the buttons in, but like run it like 12 to 1 and crush the piss out of that sucker, but put an overdrive plugin like a Sans Amp Pre or something like that.
Who needs tape?
And drive that crap. Oh, I'll use the tape too. Drive that in for like
Anthony's enrolling in a 12-step program for
my God.
tape head one of these.
So many things. I'm clean though. But like driving on the last note, like the first time I did it, like I just kind of like didn't like listen to it, drew the automation in where I thought it should be. I got goosebumps. Like I haven't got goosebumps in a long time, and it sounded so good. And then I got real techie about it, and it got worse. So I just went back to my last save and did it that way. And it sounds. Oh, there's so much music in what you can do with that, and just knowing how to work your channels. Like I know we're getting out of the live realm a bit more into the studio, but there's so much cool stuff you can do. Like compression's not just an effect; like it's almost an instrument. You can drive it so nice into. Like I know we didn't really get into it yet, but like with some of the 1176 compressors, there's an off function on the attack time, and you can just drive the entire thing with the input and output knobs. Yeah. Yeah. And that, like, I've done that a lot, and there's like, I know, most people tell you like, well, set it where it should be, and then fix other stuff later if you need to, but on some of this guy's vocal takes, even on just the main channel, I will ride the compressor. Like I'm looking at my indicators to make sure I'm not clipping on anything else, but I'll just drive the compressor, and it makes it exciting for me while I'm recording, but at the same time makes the vocal exciting in the mix. And there's a lot less processing later on because I'm doing it with an outboard 1176. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, we're getting close to the end, so I think we'll start to wrap things up here by saying, those of you who are, if you're a noob, first of all, like the best thing you can invest right now is your time.
Yeah.
It is not hard to get a hold of a DAW and a compressor plug-in. Spend all the time you can learning how that stuff behaves. And, if you don't have tracks to work on, record your buddy's band, plug in a microphone and just talk into it and work on that. You can go on the internet. There's plenty of places where you can find complete songs as individual tracks to work on. Yep. Some of them even legitimately.
Yeah, like Reaper is great. Reaper is great for that because you can really all the plugins are useful. They're not just junk because it's free. Like they are useful plugins.
Yeah, if you're working in GarageBand, please download Reaper.
Yeah,
Garage. I can't work at all in GarageBand, so don't feel bad if you're working in GarageBand and you can't make it sound like anything. Because it's for dumb people. And you're not dumb. You're listening to smart to noise ratio. You're getting smart. The ratio of your smarts is increasing all the time.
Yeah, at least an infinity to 1 ratio is what we run this at. So
right. And if you subscribe to our new, click on the Smart to Noise Ratio online store, and you can buy packets of tone molecules shipped to your house, still fresh. Wow, that didn't get Even a chuckle. All right, never mind. But anyway, I was saying, the
Bones is looking at you so dirty right now. He stopped looking at you. He's just looking at the ground.
All right, but anyway.
The cat doesn't like it.
There's more than one way to use a compressor other than just using it as an insert. Whether that's on an aux if you're in Pro Tools, or as an insert plugin if you're in Reaper or another DAW, or inserted on a channel on your desk. Insert that sucker on a group, run, into it and out of it. Get it so you can control what it's doing based on your fader moves. And,
if you haven't done it before, be careful about putting on a group. Like, work that just a little bit before you...
Well, do it during rehearsal or something like that.
Do
it during the opening act. Or better yet, go to your buddy's rehearsal space and try it there. But do try this stuff and do it a lot. Like the first time you do it, you're not going to hear it. And the idea is that you don't hear it eventually. Like you get so that you're feeling it, and it's subtle, but it's having an effect, and it's making things better and better and better. Like I don't know. I chuckle. Like people tell me I'm a really good sound guy. I'm like, no, I just know how to use my stuff. Like,
right. And that's what it is. That's with anything. Like people tell you you're great at something. You're like, no, I'm good at what I do.
No, I'm just the only guy that has compressors and knows how to set them correctly. Like, there's nothing special about me. There's plenty of other guys that know what I know and do what I do. You haven't run into them yet. Mm-hmm. So, this is the stuff to build up your chops. Like compression is everything. Gain structure is everything. And
we should do a gain structure show.
We should.
Maybe next week we'll get into that. Brand should be free. Like
that would be a great one to do. Actually, that's the very first thing you should learn. So if you listen to this whole podcast and you feel like it all went over your head, don't worry. Next week we'll start a notch down the ladder and get you brought up.
Yeah.
But compression is everything. I mean, it's not just controlling the dynamics. It's controlling feel. It's controlling power and energy, and it's also controlling EQ, like stuff. Yep. Tonality changes as it goes through a compressor, and I'm not talking about like, oh yes, we just run this through this vintage tube compressor with the settings all off just because it imparts a certain magic to the like no, like
I do that though.
Yeah, but you're not snooty about it, so I let it go.
Not yet. Wait until I get bigger glasses.
So like
bigger glasses and roll my pants
like those
up.
car club guys that Jeremy Clarkson makes fun of. I say, have you seen my Ferrari? Adenoid crowd that he talks about. Anyway, this is the stuff to be practicing in your own time. Get a hold of some tracks. If you're a live guy, just you're not either not working a lot or you don't have your own system. If you're mixing in clubs or something, get a hold of a DAW. Get a little recording program on your laptop or your mom's computer or something. Mess around with this stuff because the more you understand it, the better you're going to be and the better gigs you're going to get.
Oh yeah.
And subtlety is the key. Like when you're starting out, you're going to kill some stuff. You're going to bash it with a hammer. You're going to squash it in a vise and learn what that sounds like, and then back it off, and then learn what that sounds like.
Don't do that anymore.
And then back it off some more, and keep learning, keep experiencing it. All right, so that's about it. We're getting close to the hour mark, so we're going to wrap it up here. Actually, finish up in a timely fashion.
Nice.
And I'm going to do the wrap up. I'm still awake enough, despite the late hour, that I've gotten really sick. I listen to other podcasts, and the wrap up is always like, "Oh, I wish it wasn't ending." With, listening with bated breath to every last word of the wrap up. And I listen to the end of our podcast, and I'm like, "Shut up already!" So
just turn the damp thing off. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. Read that stuff.
I'm going to make every effort to say what I need to say, and then we're going to get. All right, so we've gotten some great input coming in. Guys on Reddit, we love you very much. Thanks for tuning in and reading and listening, all of you that do. Also, feel free to contribute. We're here. We're listening to you guys. The occasional thanks for good advice is great, but if you've got questions you'd like answered in depth or discussed, we're happy to pick up on those.
Or stuff that we have said wrong and you've got better ideas for.
Yeah, don't be snooty. Like, if you know better than us, tell us. We're not just here to share information. We'd like to get some too.
Oh yeah.
We've by no means reached the apex. So yeah, if you're pissed off at us because we said something wrong, and sometimes we misspeak. I think I said hip hop when I meant dubstep the other day, but I didn't get any hate mail over it. So
it's all right. You get slapped later.
Thanks.
Yep. When you're good in the sleep.
But specifically, other than just these usual like, oh yes, shower us with your attention, we do need your help here because a couple of things that have been pretty successful for us is when we do a whole week's worth of posts. So we had Mic Trick Week. That was great. We got a couple suggestions coming in. Then we just did... we almost had we did Book Week next, and then this last week, I almost had a whole week of posts about double patching. Like, I feel like if I had just saved those Patch Bay posts until this week, I could have had a full Grand Slam week of just posts about patching.
We got to get our numbers up, though. Save up for next month, dude.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we got some super input from our friend Ike in Germany. And actually, I didn't even bring up. He's got some tricks too for. That's advanced.
We don't have time for that right now.
That's deep end stuff. I had to read it 6 times before I got it, and now I got it, so it's all good. But we'll get that to you eventually. But anyway, if you have some thoughts on what our next week-long series should be on, by all means, hit us up on Twitter, hit us up on Facebook, locate our email addresses right on the blog. That's once again smart2noise.blogspot.com. If you're a listener only and not yet a reader, by all means, swing in there. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you'd like to hear and read about. And I know we keep promising mini podcasts.
I'm running short on time. Maybe if I can get Brandon out sometime this week, I'd like to do the Glenn Johns
before it falls out of fashion again.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got keep looking for it. Don't give up hope on us. We will get them. I also owe Nate, our friend Nate, one about vocal EQ. So
we should have Amanda on for that.
Well, I was going to try and do examples. I think I'm going to do it without examples. I think I'm just going to boil my thoughts down and just do a short 10-minute piece on it. Just talk about it because
you should have her. Like Carl had her EQ his vocals for her.
True. This is true.
Like she's actually really good at that. She does. My wife doesn't know what she's doing behind the desk, but she knows how to make it work and make it sound real good.
But is she going to be able to tell the people listening at home what she does? She's like, well, I grab the big gray knob and I twiddle it, and then I grab the little gray knob and I twerk it, and then I
maybe if we just draw her
channel strip.
4-band, we like I do this and this, like so this. Hold on, pause.
Maybe it could be the first video mini podcast if we get like the telestrator out there. We'll have her drawing on a picture of.
She won't do that. She's pregnant and she doesn't want anybody to see her.
The video would be a picture of a Midas channel strip, and she could draw where she would be turning the knobs.
I think she would do that if we gave her donuts. Donuts or tacos. That's what's working right now. All right. Donuts, tacos, queso.
Okay. All right. Well, we're already rambling, and it's the end of the show, so we're going to cut it off right here. Yep. Because we are. So anyway, thanks again. We really, really appreciate you listening. Not that we care, because we're going to do this whether you listen or not, but to see the numbers steadily climbing of people who are checking in, listening, we really appreciate that. We appreciate that you're that what we're doing is helping somebody else out, because that's what it's all about. I mean, Sound Guys, it's kind of a closed society, but once you're in, we're really here to help each other out, because there's a lot of people in the world against us. We got to stick together. So, brethren of the knob and fader, keep your tone molecules close, your friends even closer. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.
Have a good night.